Hello then, thank you for joining us from wherever you are. We are coming to you live from our studios in Kokomlemle on digital address GA09925339. Our top stories this hour. Ghana's COVID-19 recovery is low due to the standard of testing being used. That's according to former Communications Minister, as he calls for crash courses for health professionals in the midst of soaring coronavirus cases. We have details as new cases emerge in the northern region. Also, police in the eastern region prepares to charge 14 people picked up for performing depot raids in the eastern region, whilst the police remain unsure of what to do with those arrested for breaching social distancing protocols last Friday, whilst installing a new chief for Ekropong Ekwapim. Also, Vice President Dr. Baumia fires back at former President Mahama, saying the former president should look at the data and stop embarrassing himself. Those are top stories this hour. Join us on DSTV 421, GoTV 144. Remember, we're streaming live on YouTube and we are free to air on your digital television platform. Join me also with your thoughts and comments on our WhatsApp platform. My name is Gifty Ando Apia. This is The Pulse. Please be my guest. And we begin up north, where the region has recorded, the northern region I should say, has recorded 3 more cases of COVID-19. One is from the Tolon district, a head porter who returned to the area, whilst the other 2 are from the Nanumba South district. Health officials have begun contact tracing of these cases. These results are coming from the testing center at the Tamale Teaching Hospital Public Health Laboratory, which began testing last Thursday. The Northern Regional Director of the Ghana Health Service, Dr. John D. Eleza, said this when he gave a situational report of the COVID-19 cases in the Northern region.
Weekend, from our new testing place here, we had additional 3 new cases being positive. 1 from the Tolon district, which is a Kaya who came from Accra, and then 2 from Nanumba South who have contacts to the cases that were sent to us from OT region. So that's how come we got the 3 new cases, which means our total number will change from the 13 to the 16 if they update it nationally. Let me say that the other information maybe we need to let the public know is that the Guineans, we have said all along that 4 of them have recovered, and therefore we have discharged them. The remaining 3, we continue trying to test them. Good to inform you that 1 of them also has recovered, so now we have 5 of them recovering. We have 2 left to recover, then the game with them will be over. We hope that the next test to do, the remaining 2 will also remain negative the second consecutive time. Then we'll be able to declare them also as fully recovered. So that's the situation with the Guineans that we had. The other situation I want to draw attention to is that, yes, it is true that as a region, we are having official number of 13 cases, but we actually have, per the reporting pattern, those cases that were picked up in OT are being managed here, because when they tested them, they just tested and they moved on. So when they came here.
So those are the latest details on COVID-19 coming from the northern region. We'll take you back to this story, but right now we have to go quickly to the CID headquarters, where that briefing is ongoing. We'll take some questions and answers, and then we'll return to the coronavirus stories.
Identified him, and they are grateful for the work that we have done so far. In respect of Soga Kope issue, since the arrest of the last person, that is Amos No, Ajay, the last person, yes, we have informed some people who matters there for them to know that this is the where we are now. But as I said, there are 2 persons on the run, and we are still working hard to get them. And I'm sure they will be happy if we are able to arrest the other people on the run, and then we successfully, prosecute them. And I'm sure with this development, we're going to have further interactions with the community so that they can win our support.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
My name is Adetogo from PSFM UTV. First of all, I must commend the police for such a wonderful work. I actually visited the place last Sunday, so where the incident happened last Friday, and the place isn't favorable at all. When I visited the place, in my interaction with the opinion leaders and some residents, they are of the view that there might be other bodies buried around the area. I want to find out if the police have any intention of, would the police rather prove these people to find out if they have more bodies buried there? Thank you.
Yes, in fact, when we interrogated them, they mentioned that they have 2 bodies buried there. But when we went to the scene, we decided, after we have exhumed the 2 bodies, we decided to, examine the area. And then to extend that, we had to bring in excavator to excavate the place. And the whole, I don't know, makeshift cemetery within the house. And we did not find any body again. And then we went to the shrine, and then we got some skulls and bones there. So we are still investigating further. And once they are with us, we're going to probe further to find out whether they have bodies buried somewhere. And we are also entreating the general public to come out with information. And I must say, this morning, for instance, somebody called me and mentioned that the suspect, one of the suspects, once resided within his community, and so we should investigate further. And we are working on that one too. But in fact, he has actually denied ever residing at that area. But nevertheless, we are going to continue with our investigations. So anybody who has any information, please do not hesitate to bring it forward.
My name is Dr. Tamiti. I think this is not the first time we are hearing stories of this nature. And then concerns have been raised that some people engage in some of these things. And then if you watch some TV stations, you see some of these people broadcasting and then trying to convince people or advertise that they can double money and all sort of things. I want to find out from the security, wise, exactly what you can do to make sure that all these things are dealt with, because it is a concern that many people are raising to see how it can be dealt with. And I believe that some people watch TV and they believe that what is on TV, they can easily get access to them and do whatever they want to do.
Thank you very much. It has also been our concern, and even before this case, we had started something. We have a task force here at the CID headquarters, and we have even written to the National Media Foundation Commission, yes, to help us with all the TV and radio stations that we have, their locations, so that we can investigate them further, because it's a concern to all of us. And so please, if you also know any radio station, because these days you realize that some of them record it somewhere and then show it. And so if you know of any radio station or TV station, even radio stations, please, you just pass on the information to us, and then we'll give it to the team to work on it. We've started long. And then you see, people are sometimes also greedy, gullible, and that is why they fall victim to these things. So we are also warning the people that they should be very careful. Those people do not have anything to offer them. They will, at the end of the day, take whatever they have. But we are working on it. Thank you very much.
My name is Abefi from Admin TV. I want to find out if all the suspects who have been remanded or kept in police custody were they tested for COVID-19.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, we test them because we are all at risk. That is the police personnel who interact with them. And so we test them before we deal with them.
My name is Maxwell. I work at JoyNews. I think it would be great if you could actually ask questions outside. I don't know if it's permitted.
What's the thing you want to ask?
Okay, you, madam, you allow him to ask his question.
Okay, yeah. So another issue that generated a lot of interest is the Ashama robbery incident in town. It generated a lot of national interest. And then another issue also has to do with the meeting that went on at City Escape, somewhere at airport. The National Democratic Congress says it has officially petitioned makers. We want to find out what is the status of that petition in the CID. And then to my substantive
3 in 1, or is it 4 in 1?
So you mentioned that they've exhumed, the police exhumed 2 bodies. I think that came up a bit clear of me. 2 bodies were exhumed. But we want to know if for the body parts, other body parts that were exhumed also, we'll be able to put a finger to it and say that, okay, in total, we're able to exhume, let's say, 4 or 5 bodies. And then last question will be about timelines on how long it's going to take to conduct this forensic examination on the bones and the skulls that were found at others. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me start from the Adesu or Mami Dede case. In fact, during the exhumation, we had 2 complete bodies. 2. That is the body of the late Edward Kote Papafiu and then Kwesi Zomelo. But we also found parts, remains of skeletal remains of people who are yet to be identified. They were not complete. In some places you had the skull, some places just bones. So I mean, if you ask me, I would say that we had 2 bodies and then parts, human parts. Some we had a skull and then human flesh there. So that is all that we had. And I must say that we are going to do the DNA and then also do other examination anthropological examination to find out the sex, the age of those people. With regard, and then with that, I will not be in a position as I sit here to say today or tomorrow. Yeah, so just give us time. When it's complete, we'll let you know. With regards to the NDC case, yes, the two members of the party came and reported. Otukuno, is it Otukuno and Akamba? Yeah, came and reported that the NDC, that is the Electoral Commission, had organized a workshop. So they gave us their statement, and then we followed up to the EC. They've also given us their statement disputing the fact that they were more than 25. And so we are now going to look at the complaint against the statement given by EC, and then he who alleges must prove. So we will be inviting all the parties to come to enable the petitioners, prove to us that in actual fact they were more than 25 in a room or not. And the EC is also challenging the petitioners that they were also more than 25 who came there. It's because of, so we are still investigating. Yes, in respect of the Ashaman case, our information is that the suspects, that particular bank, in fact, they had been robbed, or clients of the bank had been robbed 3 times through the same modus operandi. And so the regional crime officer even warned or called the officials of the bank and told them that they should be careful. It looks like either there's somebody within, or maybe people are being monitored, and it's not safe for them. And lo and behold, the next day, something of that nature happened. But because, the suspects were being monitored, people, some policemen got to know of it, and then they chased them, and that led to the death, the killing of the suspects. Yes, any other? I'm surprised nobody is asking a question on Mohammed Swale today, because today is International what? Press Freedom Day. No, but yes.
So do I assume there are some questions beyond this one? That's all, not for you.
Yes, with regard to Mohammed Swale, yes, we are still investigating. In fact, people come with information. Even last week, people came with information. We followed up, but unfortunately, we are unable to, get a proper lead. And so I am pleading that anybody who has information should come to me or to my deputy, and then we'll investigate. Yes.
Okay, so Anita, you're also going to talk about Mohammed Swale.
Okay.
Thanks, Mary. Any other question beyond what we have discussed today? I would like to take some news. Alright, so I assume that we are all fine at this moment, and so we'll bring the first briefing to a close. We appreciate TV, I'm told you had this program live on your TV station. Thank you for the airtime. JoyNews as well. Thank you. Free airtime. We're grateful. Wish all of you a blessed afternoon and a great week. And of course, as against World Press Freedom Day yesterday and celebrated today by DJA, we forge forward and hope that we become much better than we are today. Have a good afternoon. Stay well, stay safe.
Thank you.
Coming to you from the police headquarters, you heard the COP Isaac Kenyabua, who is the head of CID, just briefed the media on ongoing criminal investigations. We have our reporters there. We're trying to reach Maxwell Agbagba so we can get some updates and more details for any of the part that we may have missed. But he gave the details on ongoing investigations, including recent special police operations in which they found dead bodies, or if you like, remains of people buried in what they're calling a shrine. He talks about the names of the persons. One, Edward Kwate Papafio, who has been identified, but he says that there are other skeletal remains that they found that have not yet been identified in this particular place. He also responded to Maxwell Agbagba's question about the NDC case. You recall that the NDC, led by Sam George as well as Akamba and Otukuno, had filed a case about the EC's actions. They said that the Electoral Commission had gone ahead to hold a forum that had a lot more people, even when President Akufo-Addo had issued a directive about mass gatherings. So they also went to make a report. He says that the two members reported the case as the two members of the NDC, Joshua Kamba and Otukuno, made those reports. He says statements were taken from the NDC, but then they also followed up with the Electoral Commission. The Electoral Commission has given their statements as well, but the Electoral Commission is disputing the claims being made by the NDC as far as the number of people there at the time is concerned. They say that they weren't above 25, and so they are studying the information and the statements that they have. That's the CID, to get the proof that actually the Electoral Commission did err. There was also a question about some incident in Ashaiman. He talks about how the robbery case, that there was a pattern to this robbery case that had happened in Ashaiman before. They said that they're also following that investigation. And then he raised the issue about Ahmed Swale's death, which he says the reporters, they weren't asking questions about. But if you recall, former President John Mahama yesterday added it to the list of reasons why he thinks Ghana's press freedom ought to be given much more protection. He mentioned it when he was commemorating World Press Freedom Day. He says that the investigation seemed to have stalled. Well, the CID head also raised that today. He says that they're getting some information, but unfortunately the information they're getting does not give them any strong lead. And so they're still following that story. We'll be crossing over to Maxwell Agbagba to get more on this. So if you're just joining us, this is the Pulse with me, Gifty and Opia. We started with giving you an update on the coronavirus cases. We heard that new cases are emerging in the northern region. We'll go back to that story shortly. But before that, there was this briefing by COP Kenyabua, who is head of the CID, talking about a special police operation that unveiled or discovered about 3 headless bodies, we understand, that were also exhumed in the bush at a place called Sechikrum in the eastern region. Let's go to Maxwell Agbagba now for more. Hello, Maxwell. Maxwell? Right,
yeah, hello,
certainly. Maxwell, go ahead and tell us what more information has the COP Kenyabua been given?
Hello, Gipsy?
Yes, Maxwell, go ahead. We hear you and we see you too.
You're asking which other updates Director General of the Criminal Investigation Department has been talking about. Well, this briefing and all he told us, it's basically to update us on three major issues within the first quarter of 2020. So he said initially they limited even questions to the three key issues. And first of all, one of them has to do with a major arrest that the CID has been able to has been successful with in Adesso in the eastern region, where we are told that two men who are actually what he described them as fetish priests. Actually, they actually kidnapped someone, a man in his 60s who is a biochemist. They kidnapped him and then killed him at Eastern Region. We are told that the Criminal Investigations Department, men from the Criminal Investigations Department actually raided the compound of these two fetish priests, and then they were able to exhume two complete bodies. We are told that later when they went there, they also found a gallon suspected to contain some blood in there. All of these items have been brought to the police headquarters for further investigations. We are told also that some other body parts were found also there at the residence of these two fetish priests. These body parts have also been brought to Accra, and investigations are going to continue. Forensic examination will be conducted on this human skulls, suspected human skulls, and then suspected human parts here. And then the second update was on the killing of the Sugakofe Assemblyman Mauto Ajahli. Well, we are told by the Director General of the Criminal Investigations Department that one of the men, the prime suspect in this particular case, has confessed to police that he actually shot and then killed the assemblyman for Sugakope. We are told that there was another suspect, his accomplice, who actually stabbed the assemblyman and killed him in the process. But another thing that the Director General of the CID reiterated the point that this is not contract killing, and indeed he said from their investigations and their interrogations of the suspects who are in their custody, they confessed to them that it is not contract killing, and that they shot and killed the assemblyman because he resisted when they stormed his home. So he made that point clearly, and then reiterated the points that they killed him because he resisted the attack from them. The two men, we are told, are in the prime suspects, we are told, are in the custody of the police. We are told that two of them are currently on the run. Another third update was on the robbery incident at the residence of the IMF country director. We are told that the main suspect in this particular case, Mohamed Buzu, he has gained notoriety in this particular area, especially in the robbing of expatriates and then diplomats in the country. They have interrogated him, and he has confessed that indeed he visited the home of the country director, the IMF country director, and then tried robbing him. He was successful, robbed some iPhones, some cash, and then some other items. The Director General of the Criminal Investigations Department says this tarnished the image of the country, because we are told that the country director had to leave Ghana to South Africa to seek refuge. Then we are told that some American investigators were also brought in, but he says, the Director General of the CID says, by the time that they arrived in the country, they had done extensive work on this particular matter and had some way, somehow brought closure to this whole issue. So that was these were the three major updates that we got from the Director General of the Criminal Investigations Department. Like I mentioned, they limited questions to just these three, but we had the opportunity to ask other questions. And as you heard him mention about the Ahmed Swale, Ahmed.
So that's Maxwell Agbagba there with an update of what's been going on at the CID headquarters, where they've been updating all of us on what's been happening so far. He said that they were limited to ask questions within the areas that the CID intended to address the reporters on, and that's some arrests that have been made from body parts that have been found from the eastern region, the Sogakope killing of the assemblyman, and then a robbery of the IMF country director's residence. Masula Baba there will bring you more in a subsequent bulletin at this point. Right now, let's return to coronavirus stories. I told you earlier on what the northern region is doing, where three cases have been recorded there. One of them from Tolon district, a head porter who returned to the area, while the other two are from the Nanumba South district. Health officials there have begun contact tracing of these cases, and the results are also coming from the testing center at the Tamale Teaching Hospital Public Health Laboratory, which began testing just last Thursday. The Northern Regional Director of the Ghana Health Service, Dr. Eleza, has been speaking to us. Listen.
Over the weekend, from our new testing place here, we had additional 3 new cases being positive. One from the Tolon district, which is a Kaya who came from Accra, and then 2 from Nanumba South, who have contacts to the cases that were sent to us from OT region. So that's how come we got the 3 new cases, which means our total number will change from the 13 to the 16 if they update it nationally. Let me say that the other information maybe we need to let the public know is that the Guineans, we have said all along that 4 of them have recovered, and therefore we have discharged them. The remaining 3, we continue trying to test them. Good to inform you that one of them also has recovered, so now we have 5 of them recovering. We have 2 left to recover, then the game with them will be over. We hope that the next test will do. The remaining 2 will also remain negative the second consecutive time. Then we'll be able to declare them also as fully recovered. So that's the situation with the Guineans that we had. The other situation I want to draw attention to is that, yes, it is true that as a region, we are having
That's Dr. D. Eleza, the head of the region's health directorates. Let's get on to the ground with our correspondent Martina Bugri, who joins us. Hello, Martina.
Hi, Gifty.
Martina, so first of all, we understand that there are 3 more cases that have been recorded over there, and contact tracing is ongoing. Is there any latest update on this?
What we were told was that one of them happens to be somebody who returned from the Kaya, and so they are doing the contact tracing on the persons he might have come into contact with. And then the other is also someone from Woolensea areas, and so they are doing those other contact tracing. But one thing that the health director raised concern was that because of stigmatization, people are beginning to give them fake information, and that is really costing them a lot. He cited an example, somebody who said he was at Tatale. They had to travel all the way to Tatale only to be told that the person does not come from that place. They had to follow, and then they finally met a person. The person said, I am from this community, but I had to do this because I don't want to be stigmatized. The media to help educate people that people who recover or people who are sick of COVID-19 are not a death warrant.
Martina, let's talk about the laboratory, the new laboratory for the region that has just, started the testing. The work started on Thursday. What are officials there saying about the exercise so far?
I didn't get that. If you could,
I'm talking about the fact that there's a new testing center there in the region, which you've very well filed a report about last week. they've started the testing there. What are officials there saying? How is it improving the processing, you know, of knowing who in this region has coronavirus?
The health director said it has fastened the process. In the past, they would send the samples to Kumasi, and that would take up to 3-4 days or sometimes a week to get the results back. And so while they are still waiting, some of them people move around. And so he says that it has improved the time waiting for a result, and this would help them to be able to get the people who are infected very early for treatment. That's one. It also helps them to be able to restrict them, and so they are not able to interact with more people like it would have happened if they have to wait for about a week to get the result.
Finally, Martina, give us details on the Burkinabés who have been arrested as well.
We are told that they were traveling. They came through unapproved routes into the country, and they were intercepted at the Saviligu checkpoint. They offered bribes to the immigration officers so that they can have their way and pass through, but they turned down the offer and they were arrested. And so they have been sent back to Paga, where they will be repatriated back to their hometown.
Were these people tested?
That we are not told in the press statement which the immigration office just released.
Martina, thank you very much for that update. Martina Bugri there, correspondent in the northern region, with that update on what's been happening there. 3 new cases recorded there. We'll take a very quick break. We'll return shortly. Welcome back to the show. We'll take a look at what's happening across the world, and we go to Germany, which has been gradually easing restrictions in the hope that life can have a semblance of normalcy there. So how is that happening as we hear children are even beginning to go to school? Thomas Sparrow is political correspondent with our partners DW. He joins us from home in Germany with more. Hi Thomas, it's good to have you as usual. Now let's start with our conversation with a look at the measures to ease restrictions and how they are playing out essentially.
Nice to be with you, Gifty, and hello to all over there. And in fact, as you say, Germany has indeed started a next step of easing of restrictions. In particular, as of this week, certain shops obviously are already open, but museums, galleries, zoos, botanical gardens are also obviously opening, as well as hairdressers. All have to keep certain measures, all have to keep obviously the social distancing and hygiene measures, but as of today they can also open. That's one measure. The other measure we had already mentioned earlier in one of our conversations, namely that schools can gradually start to reopen as well, step by step. That's a very difficult measure because on the one hand you have to guarantee that kids can go back to school and they can be healthy in a school environment, but on the other hand obviously you have to make sure that the school is prepared to actually do so, and that's why in the last few weeks schools across the country have been preparing to make sure that when kids come back step by step that they can actually be in an environment that is healthy and where they can keep those social distancing and hygiene measures that we've been talking about. So these are the key measures here in Germany. This does not mean that Germany has now left the lockdown completely. In fact, restaurants, bars, discos are still closed. For example, traveling and tourism is still not allowed. So these kinds of measures are still in place, and that gives you an idea of how Germany is doing this step by step, very cautiously. And in fact, Angela Merkel and the regional leaders will meet again on the 6th of May, so on Wednesday, to try and analyze whether the measures have been effective so far. In other words, whether the measures that have been taken in order to ease those restrictions have been followed by a drop in the numbers here in Germany.
And that's exactly where I want to go to. Before I talk about the impact of the ease of restrictions on the rate of infection, Thomas, I'm a bit curious about the schools. It's one of the biggest conversations that we've had here in Ghana. And I just want to find out how are authorities going to ensure that, like you're saying, children can go back to school and that it will be safe for them. What is the plan? If you can break it down for me a little bit.
So the first element of that plan, Gifty, is that not all classes will go back to school at the same time. So the focus, for example, is first and foremost on school leavers, so those pupils who have very important exams. So they are allowed to go back first. That same applies for other classes, but most classes will only have to go back gradually, whether that means going only a few days a week or going only a week at a time or so. The goal is to make sure that all pupils can go back to school in some way or another before the end of the term, in other words, before the summer holidays begin. How that happens is obviously up to regional leaders, up to the regional governments, but in particular what they do have to keep in mind is it has to be gradual, so not all pupils at the same time. They have to make sure that only a certain number of pupils can go into a classroom at a certain period. So for example, you can't have a very large group or a very large class attend a class at the same time. A measure in which they can do that is dividing, for example, classes, or make sure that one class only goes a few days a week and the other class goes later in the week. So that's a key measure. At the same time, making sure that, for example, kids are divided when they have to go to their school breaks, so separating school breaks across the day, or lunch breaks and things like that. So all these very, very important measures to make sure that at no point when a pupil goes to school, he will be surrounded by many, many individuals as well. On the other hand, school authorities have to make sure that those social distancing measures are maintained. So for example, if you see a classroom, you will only see a handful of students separated, only one pupil per desk. That gives you an idea of how this is being implemented, but also, Gifty, an idea of how difficult it is to implement this, because here you have obviously schools that are full normally with a lot of students, a lot of pupils, and as such authorities have had to plan it very carefully how to make sure that those rules and regulations can be followed, while at the same time guaranteeing that the kids can have a proper class when they go back to the classrooms.
Well, we're still trying to figure out what to do with that here, but this sounds like a very difficult one, because children are bound to want to, get closer to their friends, especially after being away from each other for a very long time. But we'll see how that goes, Thomas. But let's look also at the easing of restrictions and how it is impacting the rate of infection in Germany. Has it reduced the number of recorded cases, or has it increased it even with a little margin?
That's, Gifty, the question that's actually going to be analysed and discussed this Wednesday, and there's a reason for that. Angela Merkel and regional leaders have found that the best way to realise whether the easing of restrictions have an impact is by analysing in a 2-week period. And that 2-week period, if you count the first restrictions that were eased in April, when, for example, some of the shops were allowed to open, is actually on the 6th of May. So on the 6th of May, they will be able to have 2 weeks of data to analyze whether the opening of shops, the gradual reopening of schools, and I'm talking here also about the planning of that, had some effect in the actual numbers. And we're talking here specifically about not only the numbers of infected, because Germany still has a high number of infected, but that very important number where you can guarantee one person, how many people does that person also infect. We've spoken about this before in this program, that the number has to be 1.0, and Germany had for some time had that around 0.7, meaning that 1 or 10 people only infected 7, meaning that the number was actually gradually going down. And this is something that's going to be very interesting this week to analyze, whether that number has remained like that factor, or whether it has increased, in which case Germany will probably have to reevaluate some of its measures.
Thomas, finally, before you go, talk to us about the search for a vaccine. How is it panning out? Germany was one of the countries we had, was, leading that search. An update, if you may.
Yes, so there are, if you talk about the vaccine, it is important the context here, because Angela Merkel is not the only leader there. Other leaders around the world have stressed that until we have a vaccine, until we have some sort of treatment, the world will have to live with some sort of restriction. In other words, we won't be able to go back to that 100% sense of normality that we had before. So that gives you an idea of why it is so important to look for that vaccine and look for that treatment. Now, there are many projects around the world, many development projects around the world, but only a handful of those projects have entered the sort of clinical trial phase. Here in Germany, you have one of them in the city of Mainz, so in the western part of the country, one institute there is working with another big conglomerate to try and find that vaccine to carry out those clinical trials, and it's only one of a few of these cases that's being carried out in the world. So another one, for example, in the United Kingdom by the University of Oxford is also in the same or at least similar phase, and you have also projects, very similar projects in China and in the United States. Right. So all these are actually trying to focus on finding that vaccination. In particular, when we talk about the case in Germany, that first phase will involve 200 patients that are healthy between 18 and 55. And a second phase would involve patients that are more at risk to try and identify not only if there are positive results, but also if there are potentially also results that have to be changed or that are not as positive. So that is going to be a process that can take some time. There are officials have said that they want a vaccine to be there until the end of this year, but German officials have been cautioning that that is a long process, that is not something that you can expect to have just in a matter of weeks or months. The experts that I've been following are mentioning that it could be around 12 to 18 months before you have a vaccine that can be used in people, that can be tested with an amount of certainty which is safe to use. But again, obviously there are different procedures and different processes altogether, so it gives you an idea of how interesting this is, but also how important it is to find a vaccination if indeed we're going to go back to some sort of normality, not only here in Germany but around the world as well, because the goal of German officials is to make any vaccine available to everyone.
Thomas, thank you so much for these updates that you give us weekly. We certainly will come to you on Wednesday for more. Thomas, thank you. Thomas Faris, political correspondent with our partners DW, he joined us all the way from his home where he's working in times of coronavirus. Let's take a look at the worldometer. What is happening on the world scene as far as infections, etc. are concerned. All right, we'll bring that to you. Right now, though, I'm bringing you back home. Vice President Dr. Before you go there, we have it, 3,596,433. That is the number of coronavirus cases, over 3 million that we've recorded so far. And that's the number of people that have died, 249,469. That's 249,469. Stay safe, wear your masks, keep washing your hands, and if it's possible, stay home. Also, over 1 million people have recovered, which is also a good thing. Like I said, we're coming back home. What is Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia saying? Well, he's sitting back at former President John Dramani Mahama. He says Mr. Mahama is, quote, embarrassing himself by criticizing government's handling of the COVID-19 fight and claiming to have done better. Dr. Bawumia was responding to recent comments that the former president made about government's handling of COVID-19.
The NDC was in government for 8 years. They may think that we have short memories, but we can still remember very clearly that after 8 years that they had in office, in government, to demonstrate their prowess in managing this country and managing the economy, after 8 years, what did they leave us with? They left us with declining agriculture, declining industry. Interest rates were high, inflation was high. In fact, if you look at the data in terms of macroeconomic performance in any economy, since the year 2000, the tenure of the former president was the worst in terms of outcomes in macroeconomic performance. That's the data, it's not me saying it. The banking system was weak. Unemployment was rising. Our national health insurance was back to cash and carry. We had 4 years of doomsday with its devastating impact on our economy. And not even withstanding that, electricity prices were being increased by an average of 45% between 2010 and 2015. Our public finances were in a precarious state, of course, that resulted in us having to go to the IMF for a bailout and policy credibility. Taxes were being increased. There was a freeze on public sector recruitment, cuts in allowances for teachers, lecturers, cuts in allowances for lecturers, abolition of teacher training allowances, abolition of nursing training allowances, and even for teachers who had worked for 2-3 years, they were being paid just 3 months of allowances. I mean, common chalk was even a problem in our schools. And this is really the history that the NDC would want us to forget, and which we should not forget. Our memories should not be that short. We should remember what they did. And Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo took over the reins of government in 2017. After just over 3 years in office, he's been able to manage the transformation of this country, and we have been able to perform much, much better than the situation we inherited. In fact, the data is very clear. And so my humble advice to former President Mahama is to take a look at the data. This is not Green Book data. This is just the data, right? Take a look at the data before you speak. Otherwise, you will end up embarrassing yourself.
On leadership in times of crisis, Dr. Bawumia said President Akufo-Addo has demonstrated leadership and competence amidst the pandemic better than the former president, who he says failed to properly manage the doom-sought situation during his tenure.
If you want to test the robustness of an economy, you test it in a time of crisis. Thankfully, we have had 2 crises. Under the NDC, there was an internally generated crisis, which was doom-sought. Under the presidency of Nana Akufo-Addo, there has been an externally generated crisis, which has been the global coronavirus pandemic. I just want you to ask yourselves, how have these 2 crises been managed? The doom-sought crisis, which crippled this economy for 4 years. What were the mitigating measures offered to businesses and individuals during doom-sought? This was an internally generated crisis. We saw that even during doom-sought, electricity prices were being increased. Fuel prices were being increased. Teacher training allowances were being cancelled. Nursing training allowances were being... All of that was happening during that particular crisis. You look at the coronavirus crisis and you look at the difference in terms of what has happened. The president has reduced electricity prices, made it free for lifeline consumers, has given free water for all Ghanaians for 3 months, has made sure that there is a stimulus package of 600 million Ghana cedis for businesses. And we have seen domestic production of PPEs, personal protective equipment for our health workers locally. So that the difference couldn't be more stark between the leadership under a crisis under the doom-sought and that under the coronavirus epidemic. So I ask a simple question. Who will you trust in a time of crisis? The answer, I would say, is very, very clear. Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo has shown leadership and concern for ordinary Ghanaians.
Now, police in the eastern region are unclear about charging chiefs who flouted the law restricting movement and social distancing directives to install the new paramount chief of Ekapim, while the Somanya police has given indication that some 14 persons arrested for performing puberty rites in Somanya in breach of the same law on social gathering will be put before court tomorrow. The police have yet to take a decision on the chiefs who were arrested and granted bail last Friday. The Kropon District Police Commander Stephen Tete isn't certain when the case will be dealt with. Kofi Sian joins me with more. Hello, Kofi.
Hello, Gissy.
Kofi, let's start with what the police is saying as far as the persons arrested for Friday's breach is concerned. Exactly what do they say?
Okay, so I've been speaking with 3 of the police bosses in the eastern region. First, I spoke to the Kropon District Police Commander, Superintendent Stephen Tete, and he told me that they have invited the chief to the police quarters in Ekropon to find out or to engage them as to how the case will be followed. What he says is that for now, they've not decided to prosecute or charge them for the offenses that happened last Friday. And he adds that these are people who have a large following, so it will not be prudent for the police to, go ahead immediately to prosecute them. That is what he's been telling me. So I went straight to the regional police bureau, DSP event, to find out what the region is also doing about the case, and he told me that he's been asked not to comment on the matter in Ekropon. From there, I spoke to the Astomena District Police Commander, DSP Isaac Osin, and he told me that the 14 people who were arrested will be put before court today. It was supposed to be today, but what he says is that the documents were not ready, and that by this afternoon they will be ready for prosecution tomorrow. So that is what people have been talking about. The police have been talking about in the region, and it has generated a lot of controversies because these are crimes or offenses that carry the same weight. So why would the police decide to, take on one and decide not to, go on with the other? So it generated a lot of controversy in the region.
Speaking of controversies, I'm wondering how the people who have been arrested for the deport rights feel about, the treatments being meted out to them. I mean, of course, the consequences of their action and how the same is playing out as far as those who install the chief is concerned. What do they say? What kind of talk goes on there?
Well, you see, I haven't had the opportunity to speak to these suspects, the 14 suspects who were arrested for the puberty rights. But if you monitor the platform where most Krobo indigents, are. For instance, if you go on WhatsApp, if you go on Facebook, they are wondering why the police will take up their matter, the 14 people who were arrested, and decide to prosecute them and leave the 4 chiefs who were arrested and granted bail last Friday. So it's been an ongoing discussion between, by residents of Somena and Neta Janenta. They feel that the police are not being fair with them.
Well, we'll be monitoring the situation and see how it all pans out. Kofi, thank you very much. Kofi Siaw is our correspondent in the Eastern region. Now, former Minister of Communication, Dr. Edward Omani Boama, says Ghana is recording low COVID-19 recoveries due to the standard of testing being used. Speaking on the Super Morning Show, Dr. Omani Boama noted that some former health practitioners can be given crash courses to handle emergency situations as the number of Ghana's COVID-19 cases increase. Ghana's case count stands at 2,196. 18 people have died. 229 have recovered.
Our numbers are rising. Unfortunately, the graph that we see is not too helpful in terms of predicting whether we are dropping. In terms of dropping, we know we are not dropping, we are rising, but plateau, because there was a point that the graph had shown a certain horizontalness, which elsewhere they would have said, oh, we are plateauing, so it looks as if. But then we started rising again. It's because of the inherent challenges in the way our testing system is being managed. So, at best, you can put the overall effect of the step-ladder graph that we are seeing together and say that, look, the cases are increasing. So, even if the mortalities are low here, even if the number of cases that are developing the crisis are lower than the expected percentage, the rise will definitely impact on the total number that will need emergency care. And because of our peculiar situation of having just 67 ventilators within the entire public system, minus the private sector, and maybe the 20 that the government said the ordered are in, then maybe we have 87. So you can imagine what will happen. It is not just also about ventilators. If you're looking at health systems, it's an overall thing. It's about infrastructure, it's about the equipment, and most importantly, also about the human resource. Do we have enough anesthetists? The kind of Dr. Dujanfi, Dr. Chris, Dr. Cornelio Kaku, and several others who can really, on the spur of the moment, take charge and respond to the needs of such critically ill patients. Do we have enough response?
Welcome to Frontline, a segment we've created here on the show to cater to everything frontline, or everything that borders people who are working at the front lines. Now, ever wondered how a positive COVID-19 test result looks like? And do you know the processes a sample goes through till it appears on the Ghana Health Service website? Do you know what happens to a sample after it is tested? Or the people who are behind this work? Tonight at 8:30 p.m. on the JoyNews channel, we'll bring you the first part of our latest documentary dubbed Inside Noguchi, an exclusive no-holds-barred tour of Ghana's biggest testing center, an interaction with the people who are working on the front lines there. The Noguchi Memorial Institute is our focus. We'll bring you excerpt, but first listen to lead virologist Professor William Ampofo, who's been responding to some critics about the testing protocols adopted by his outfit.
I get very upset. I get very, very upset because the work we do is dedication and hard work and a lot of experience built up over many years. I've been working in this University of Ghana for half of my life, most of my life. You know, I was a student here, and then I've grown to become a professor here. So it is a big deal to me when people question the work that we do without understanding the facts. So we're very happy that you're here. You've seen the sample delivery, you've seen the sample receipt process, you've seen the painstaking effort to ensure that the samples are received properly, because that is the beginning of the testing process, okay? So you heard the average number of samples we received this week is about 2,300. Yesterday we actually received over 3,000 samples, and all this is the start of the thing. So if we had 2,000 approximately per day. Today is Friday. That's 10,000 samples. So how can somebody doubt that we have processed 68,000 samples within this period? I think when we did an estimate earlier on yesterday, we were close to 86,000, you know, for both KCCR and for Noguchi. So you will see for yourself the process. I think it's going to be educative for you to see that it's not the number of tests per day, but it's our capacity to process the samples as they come in. So depending on the volume of work and depending on the number of people we have at post, we can go up to 3,000 samples, we can do as low as 1,000 samples. So it depends on the way the work stream flows. But we have, at the peak we had over 150 people working in 3 groups, so working 24/7. Sample reception would close around 11 p.m. One person will still be dedicated, but then as you will see in the labs that we're going, we had teams working all night and all day.
Well, can you blame the public sometimes when they raise these concerns? I know it gets you upset, but you can't blame them too much also. That the concern is that the process that you're using, for instance, you talked about the pooling system that you've had to use. We've heard from the Nigeria's head of disease control, for instance, Dr. Ezekiel, exactly, raising concerns about the process that Ghana is using.
About the process. He explained that they have adopted a different approach. It wasn't about concerns. I think
he raised issues about the limitations that Ghana's
limitations of the method. Therefore, they have chosen a different approach. you will see when we go to the lab, that's the reason I jumped in, is that you see, sometimes the phrase that is adopted is not appropriate to the circumstances. What he said was that, I think people were saying that in Ghana they are testing thousands of samples. Why aren't you doing the same? Then he said, we have taken a different approach because of the limitations. The approach we have adopted here has nothing to do with another country's situation. We looked at our capacity, we looked at our resources, and we looked at our techniques, which we have been using over the past couple of years for avian influenza, and we've modified that to use for COVID. So it's not about the pooling, it's about the ability to adopt the appropriate strategy for the public health surveillance that is required. When it comes to normal surveillance, we don't pool the samples. We do them individually because in the time frame that we're operating, it's enough to do the samples one by one. In this particular contact tracing, to try and identify the positive individual and isolate the person, we adopted the strategy that we thought would work fastest in order to identify somebody who was positive. And when we go up to the lab, I'll show you the protocols that we have adopted to ensure that the system that we have taken up is sensitive enough. Sensitive meaning we are able to detect a true positive, and also it is specific enough, meaning that we're able to rule out identify and determine a true negative. Yeah.
So this is a system that, given the opportunity, Noguchi will stand by in terms of adopting such a process, just for the education of the public.
Of course. I mean, we would not do something that we feel that's not appropriate. Right. That's it. And of course, we will share our scientific reports. We will publish this. It will be peer-reviewed by other scientists. And I think the way that we have worked will stand the test of time.
But I hope these don't discourage you too much, do they?
Not exactly, but I think that as we explain what we do, people should appreciate the work that we do and not ascribe. You see, when you hear the word massage, it's very offensive because as scientists, you know, integrity is a major value that we hold dearly. And so what will we get by changing figures? We produce the data, and the data is shared with appropriate authorities. This is the Ghana Health Service, the Ministry of Health, and they use it to inform the intervention. So why would they do anything that would not enable them to deal more effectively with the response, which is really key to, you know, the public health of everybody in Ghana and also our neighbors. So I think that we will do our best in the circumstances, and we would rather hope that we would be appreciated instead of being vilified by some people, I don't know for whatever purposes they seem to take delight in criticizing negatively the work that we do. But we are encouraged, and we will continue our work.
Well, so briefly before we start the tour, though, since we are on conspiracy theories and the things that people have said about Noguchi, for instance, maybe you don't like the word, but that's some of the things that have come up since we started this process. For instance, they would say that Noguchi may be churning out the right figures, but it appears that it does not reflect on what the public is giving. I'm sure you've heard this before.
I beg to differ, because the data is out there, and the first people who would protest would be myself and the director of the institute, because yes, we would if we saw that the data that we were producing was being altered. No, we understand the difficulties. We work all night, so I may send data to the director of public health at 4 a.m. I do not expect him to react at 6 a.m. I don't, because the data is coming from Noguchi, it's coming from KCCR. He also has to cross-check. As you saw, samples are coming from all the different districts in Greater Accra. Also, there's contact tracing ongoing also in Greater Kumasi. So if I'm the Director of Public Health, I will not rush to make an update on the website when I get data from Noguchi. I will collate with all the data sources, including case management. We have hospitals where patients are being managed, and that data summary is what then I will take my time to produce. So I think that notion that as soon as Noguchi declares a certain number of positives, Ghana Health Service must change their website, I think it's not a good appreciation of a reliable, you know, data management system. And remember, this is a dynamic outbreak. The numbers will keep changing constantly. They could go up, they could go down. So in order to understand the trend, they would have to take their time and come up with certain time points in which to manage the data. So that is the Ghana Health Service side. For us, we also have tried to come up with a system where we would, periodically provide updates on the number of samples that we have tested and the number that we have found positive.
Okay. And do we have the virus as we had it in Wuhan?
Now, a sneak peek into what to expect tonight.
It's our COVID-19 special, and prior to the COVID season, I would say that the Noguchi Memorial Institute was not as busy as it is now. As I speak, I can count about 4 vans, pickup vans, from the various sectors health directorates across the country. I have with me a special guest. Today, she's not talking politics. Susan Edouard-Mankwa, she's head here. What exactly do you do here?
Okay, so this is the sample receipt area. Initially, we have a sample receipt post, but as you said, these are busy times and unusual times, but they still go through the process as it is. So when they first arrive, they stop at the security gate, and then they fill out the sample receipt form. So, the person bringing the sample, who they are bringing the sample to, the number of samples, and the date and the time. So that's what we do here. We check the forms against the samples and make sure that the forms match the samples before they go into the lab. So this is how GASAF have presented their samples. So it's easy to count and then to check. You see that these are individually packed. Yes. Okay. So they've individually packed them in polythings or Ziploc bags.
That makes it difficult.
That makes it a little difficult, but the different ways, and then they have those who are coming with the swabs, but basically these are the two different ways.
The final point?
No, yes, not to the lab.
Okay.
These ones are going to the cold room.
Okay.
And then these ones are labeled suspected samples. So these ones will go straight to the lab.
So which district are you coming from?
From Ewutu-Senya East.
Ewutu-Senya East. So what's currently happening?
These are surveillance samples we brought.
How tedious is the process?
It's very difficult.
Very difficult. Did you get a mix-up along the line? Because usually you would have done the sorting before coming in. What happened along the line?
We did the sorting all right. The one we got here realized that we're still having challenges.
Okay. How long do you think this will take you for you to sort out before your samples are taken?
Roughly 30 minutes will be.
Okay. Please, may I know your name?
I'm Maxwell Adobo.
Okay. I wish you all the best. I pray that you finish that shortly. At this point, we'll go straight into it. Then we'll bring you what happens in the lab as well.
What is going on now?
Brought in here and kept here for contact tracing. Okay. These boxes contain samples that we have. We have food. Good. This is for freezing samples. Okay.
These are the people that are behind the figures. So I'm sure that once they get the data quickly, we will also get the results. So be patient about it. They are trying to do a diligent work, and then we can all get the best.
Inside Noguchi, as Ghana battles a virus, testing has been at the center of the fight. JoyNews' MFA Peru is granted exclusive access to the Noguchi Memorial Institute for Medical Research, a major hub of Ghana's COVID-19 testing.
So here it's a clear positive sample, okay? And when you go to the report, you see everything is showing. So for the reporter 1, which is the open reading frame of the virus, this is showing.
People should appreciate the work that we do and not ascribe. You see, when you hear the word massage, it's very offensive because as scientists, integrity is a major value that we hold dearly. And so what will we get by changing figures?
Inside Noguchi, 8:30 p.m. Monday, 4th May, and 6:30 p.m. Tuesday, 5th May, on Hotline on the Joy News channel. Inside Noguchi.
Stay glued. Today and tomorrow we'll bring you all of that, including the people who are behind all of this work to protect all of us. Well, what do we say to these people here on the front line?
My name is Edem Knight-Tay, and together with the rest of the team here at the Multimedia Group, would like to say Ayiko to our frontline health workers. Honestly, you guys are doing a very, very good job. To be at the forefront of the fight against COVID-19, we pray that God continue to protect you and to keep your family safe. We appreciate what you're doing, and words can never be enough to say we appreciate you. So thank you very much. Again, I say, God keep you and your families safe. Ayiko.
My name is KMJ. I work with the multimedia group Joy Prime. I would like to say a big thank you to the frontliners, those who have been at the forefront and hoping and praying and making sure that we stay alive. And this coronavirus thing really is taking a lot of lives out there. So for people like that to risk their lives and be at the front and taking care of us, we're grateful, and would like to say a big thank you to the Ghana Health Service and also the Ghana Police Service, and of course the Army for helping in the lockdown situation as well, especially to the health officers who are risking their lives and ensuring that we stay safe. We love you. God bless you.
Ghana frontline workers, doctors and nurses, all we can say, thank you, and thank you very much. More fire.
So on behalf of myself and the multimedia group, we wish all the frontline workers in this COVID-19 pandemic fight the very best. We pray that you stay safe, you keep safe, you respect the protocols, and like the president said, together we can get ahead of this pandemic and come out victorious.
So to all cleaners in our hospitals and isolation centers, your work is more difficult now than ever. We say thank you.
Hello, my name is Mercury Kwe, Drive Time host on Hits 103.9 FM and presenter of the Hot Speak Show on Joy Prime. I want to say a big thank you to all health workers in Ghana. It has been an amazing time. In my entire life,
Away from frontline, wash your hands regularly with soap and running water. This is probably one of the most commonly used phrases by health authorities and all of us since the outbreak of COVID-19. But how do you wash your hands if you don't have access to clean water? This is the plight of the residents of Atebubu in the Bono East region. JoyNews correspondent Anas Sabit was in the community. Here is his report.
Regular hand washing with soap and running water has been highly recommended by health authorities so far as the prevention of the COVID-19 pandemic is concerned. However, here in the Atebubu municipality of the Bono East region, what you see behind me here is the major source of water for the people staying around this particular vicinity. Now the people have two options: to either regularly wash their hands with the little water they have, or save it to be used for domestic purposes. Ideally, everyone will choose to drink from the little water they are having. That is the plight of the people here. We're interacting with these people this afternoon to find out how they are coping with the unavailability of water in the era of COVID-19.
Because this water is important to us, and it helps us a lot. Because without this water, there is not a table. And the water we are using, that's the water the animals too are also using. And it is fatal to us. It brings a lot of disease because when we look, this water, time of rainy season, it carries a lot of feces to the water. And we are also using the water.
In an era of COVID-19, we are being told to regularly wash our hands with soap and the running water. Are you able to do that once getting water is difficult here?
We are not practicing it because we have shortage of water. Where are we getting the water? And then where will I get the water and wash our hands? So we are not practicing it at all.
You step in the water with your feet, put your hands in it and then fetch it for drinking, for washing of hands and etc. Don't you think people will even carry virus into the water in this coronavirus season?
Yeah, people can carry virus into the water. And we can't do anything to stop them.
True fact, because there's no any protection agencies here. If someone is with this virus, you will never know. So the virus can carry into this water easily.
While residents here may want to follow hygiene guidelines necessary to stop the spread of the coronavirus outbreak, access to potable water or lack thereof is preventing them from doing so. They, however, have a simple but necessary plea to authorities. Reporting for Joy News, Anas Sabit, Atebubu.
They're still making do anyway, so you have no excuse when you have water running through your taps not to wash your hands. This is still the Pulse with me, Gifty and Dopia. Now, how do you feel about press freedom? Do you think the government is interfering in the work of the media here in Ghana? Well, majority of Ghanaians who partook in a research do not think so. I do not think the media is free from government interference. That's a conversation I'm having when I return from this break with the CDD. Just stay with us. Welcome back to the show. Many thanks for staying with us. About 72% of Ghanaians perceive the media is not free to report on news without government interference. Now, that's according to the latest Afrobarometer report. The report, which was released on the occasion of World Press Freedom Day yesterday, also revealed that only 19% of Ghanaians feel the media is somewhat free or even completely free. We'll be speaking with research analysts at the Center for Democratic Development on these findings. But first, let's get reaction from the president of the Ghana Journalists Association.
Need for us to defend more intensely, more tenaciously the freedom we have. And as I said, it bears repeating that no single individual can do this defense. One way is to embark on an aggressive media literacy program. Media literacy will deepen the understanding of what we do and the need for the generality of the Ghanaians to accord us the safety and the respect we need, the environment. The conducive environment cannot be created by journalists themselves. Ours is to ventilate wrongdoing, ventilate and draw attention of officialdom to ills in the society, and that's where our job ends. Others need to take it up in the society. So, an aggressive media literacy program, education, which enable Ghanaians to understand what we do as journalists and why we do what we do. I mean, this will elicit the right response, hopefully. The police, the security agencies also need that kind of education, because some of the attacks have their root in ignorance about what we do. They do not understand what the role of journalists is. That ours is to play a complementary role. and not to see ourselves as rivals. So a aggressively led media literacy program is one, and we also ought to comport ourselves in a way as not to fall easy prey to the enemies of press freedom.
I'm wondering what you think, what your thoughts are as far as press freedom in Ghana is about. Are you part of those who think that government is somewhat interfering in what journalists do in this country? Let's get on the telephone lines. I have a representative of the CDD right now to join us, look at or appreciate better the result of this report. Godfred Esiama is a research analyst at the CDD. He's the one that's joining me. Mr. Esiama, thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
So quickly, I want us to look at this report in three phases. So first, we do a brief on your executive summary, if you like, and then we do a brief on the methodology, and then we end with the implications of your findings, or if you like, recommendations. We can do this as brief as possible. I know that for academicians, it becomes a bit, laborious when you have to put all of this together. Let's start with the executive summary. From our perspective, people think from your report that journalism is not necessarily free from government interference from here. Give us a brief of what the research result is.
Well, so I think Afrobarometer research, from time to time we go out to discuss with Ghanaians their views on several issues. And one critical issue that we always ask Ghanaians about has got to do with the role of the media. And so we've been asking this question consistently for some years. And when we asked Ghanaians questions about the media in 2019, the feedback that we got was clear that many Ghanaians believe that the media, even though they expect the media or they think the media should be free to publish their views and to comment on issues without any government interference. That's for majority of the people. They believe the media has the right to investigate government and also throw more light on issues of corruption or mistakes by the government. But to them, they don't think the media is being given the free space to operate within our democratic environment. And that is a bit worrying. The expectations of the people are very good. They are in support of media freedom, but the supply of that freedom, so far as government is concerned, is what people think is not forthcoming. Okay. First of all, let me go back. So let me go back to the methodology that we used and our standard Afrobarometer survey. We spoke with 2,400 respondents across the country, and these are adult citizens. So anybody from 18 years and above qualified to be interviewed, and we use random systematic sampling methodology, which means that almost every adult Ghanaian had equal chance of being talked to by our team, which went to the ground to do the interview. So I think that's the methodology, and we can.
Mr. Siama, are you there, or did I just lose you?
Yes,
right,
I'm here.
Right, please go ahead.
Yeah, so the confidence level from this research and the methodology that we use is very high, because if you want to go out and use the same methodology and ask Ghanaians the same questions that we ask, it's possible that you have just a little variation in terms of the answers, either +2 or -2, in terms of the percentage and the answers that we have in this Afrobarometer report. Who will give you a different answer from what we are giving? So it's something that you can trust, and we can all rely on for our discussion. Okay,
it is fair as far as time time will allow us to interrogate the methodology. I'll say from this perspective that it is fair. Let's take a look at what's standing out so far, and which has been the point for discussions, that people do not think, they believe, they agree that the media has the right to go out and do whatever investigations there are, but they don't think that the media is free from government interference. Do you probe further for reasons, and what are the reasons given by these people you interviewed?
Well, so when we are doing some of these surveys, we don't ask the why and the how question, but I think we always look back at the period and assess or check what happened at that point in time that might have influenced the perspectives of citizens. And so from 2018 coming to 2019, a lot of things happened in our political space that we wouldn't be surprised. So it doesn't make the findings surprising, honestly. When you look at the things that were happening, they would definitely have impact on the thoughts of citizens. Some include people who had been murdered right from 2019 and even 2018. We had a reporter from your station who had been beaten or manhandled by security agencies. Others have been maltreated by national security personnel. We have had the government also being harsh on some media houses they think haven't complied with some provisions of the state. Even though the government may be right, but if you look at the gravity or the scale of it, we haven't seen that over a long period of time. So these are things that will push people to think that the media really do not have the space to operate. And one key thing is the fact that when these things also happen and you don't see an end to it, it also creates more suspicion, and people wouldn't see the commitment of government to resolving these issues. Then they don't think if the media person or if a media house is caught in any of these unfortunate incidents, either by the government personnel or government agencies, they will have justice.
For the qualitative approach lovers like us would have loved to delve into the minds of the people answering these questions, but I also find it interesting what the implications of these findings are. You've said some of them already, but the fact that people think that the media is not necessarily free, be it whether or not because of the investigations or ownership of media houses, etc. How worrying is this to democratic development for a country like Ghana?
It is very worrying. The media, as we know, play a very critical role so far as our democracy is concerned. They are supposed to hold government accountable. They are supposed to ask critical questions. They are supposed to expose wrongdoing. So citizens also rely a lot on the media for information. And so if the media is facing challenges which will not allow them to independently dispense some of these critical democratic functions, then it means it is undermining the progress of our democracy. We will not have the free space to share information, to ask the critical questions, which is the role of the media, which goes in a way to also help citizens to understand governance better and also be able to hold government accountable.
I'm hoping that we'll be able to have some time to look a bit more into, the findings and the implications and perhaps the recommendations of this. But what is one key recommendation you make as part of this research?
I think as the discussions have started, we want to encourage, or we want to see more commitment on the side of government so far as people have suffered. I mean, media houses have suffered from some of these things that undermine media freedom. People have been murdered, the cases are inconclusive, and people have been maltreated. We haven't seen an end to all these cases. We need constant updates, and we need the government to show more commitment to journalists. It's not really about doing or having results, but when you are seen showing commitment, it means you'll be encouraging more journalists and more people to have the confidence to do their work as expected of them. And again, you'll be able to erase that conception that the government is not committed to promoting media freedom in the country.
So certainly, closure to outstanding investigations bordering on press freedom would do. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon and for the perspective shared. Godfred Asiama is a research analyst with CDD. Before I go, as part of measures to curb the many road traffic accidents which claim over 2,000 lives in Ghana annually, the Northern Regional Minister is calling on the National Road Safety Authority to introduce, quote, on-the-spot fine for drivers who leave their broken-down vehicles on the road. Alhaji Salifu Said says scores of lives have been lost in the country as a result of these faulty vehicles, often left in the middle of the road. He tells JoyNews until such an action is taken to serve as a deterrent, that norm of drivers abandoning their faulty vehicles on the road will not end. Mr. Said has been speaking to us as part of our Arrive Alive campaign.
If the road safety units they can come out with on-the-spot fines to vehicles owners whose vehicle gets break down on the roads and they don't move them immediately out of the major roads, because those things cause deadly accidents. Like somebody have a truck, either a long truck, a tractor, a combine, a grader, a tipper truck. They just park it just for the fact that there is a technical fault, and they leave the vehicle on the road. If they don't have money to fix the vehicle, they must look for tow vehicles to tow it on the road. The vehicle shouldn't stand for more than 24 hours on a road, because it is very common in our part of the country. And sometimes they are in some hidden corners, caves, and it's very terrible.
Northern Region Minister Salifu Said there, bringing us to the end of my part, because I'm bringing in Let's Talk Showbiz. But have you realized that we're all beginning to feel like it's normal times? Well, it's not. So remember to wear your masks when you're going out, when you're among a lot of people. Remember to wash your hands and keep yourself safe. My name is Gifty Andopia. There is more news at myjoyonline.com. Why don't you log on there?